So if your emails are landing in spam, I'm going to tell you why that's happening, and then I'm going to show you how you can fix it in just 5 minutes. So first of all, if you are sending emails to your list, you need to verify your sending domain. What does that mean? Let's dive in and have a look. So when you're sending emails from Kit or any other email marketing platform, you must use a business domain. Now, if you're not familiar with that term, the domain is essentially the bit that comes after the @ sign when you're sending someone an email. So for example, if I'm sending an email to me, I would send it to John @ and then my domain name, provenflows.com. When I'm sending emails, I have to send it from essentially what's a business domain. I can't use, if I try and use like a Gmail address or a Hotmail or a Yahoo type of address, that's probably going to land me in the spam folder almost immediately. That's a big no-no, so don't do that. You have to have a domain secured for your business. Now, if you don't have one yet, it's not a problem. They're very low cost. You can get them for about $10-15 a year if you don't have one yet, and it's very simple to register them. Okay, but what does a verified sending domain look like? Well, in its most fundamental, at its most fundamental level, a verified sending domain has 3 elements of authentication. Now, it sounds technical and it sounds difficult when people give you acronyms and terms and stuff like that, but it's not really. I'm going to break it down and show you in real terms what they actually mean, what they do, and why you need to have them. So the 3 terms are referred to as SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. So let's look at each one in turn, so that we know that when we introduce it into your business, you know exactly why you're doing it and what function it performs. So let's look at the first one here. It's the SPF one. So in the most simple of terms, think of SPF as your guest list, essentially. So when you send a bunch of emails from your email platform to your subscribers, those emails essentially turn up at the recipient's email server, and those email servers have access to check what's known as your DNS records. Essentially, it's like a lookup to say, are you on the guest list or are you not on the guest list? I give permission to Kit to send emails on my behalf. So if I send, let's say, 1,000 emails, they'll arrive at the email servers. The email servers will look up the guest list and say, does Kit have permission to send emails on John's behalf, yes or no? If the answer is yes, they'll accept the emails in. If the answer is no, they won't accept them. So in this image here, on the left hand side, essentially this guy here with the green top on, he would essentially be Kit turning up with my emails. He says, hi, I'm from John's class, and then if you look at the guest list in the middle, John's class is on it. So these would be people that I give permission to send emails on my behalf. Contrast that with the person with the red top on the right hand side. Let's imagine this person was, let's imagine that was MailChimp, another email marketing platform, which I don't use. But let's say MailChimp had tried to send 1,000 emails as me, using my credentials, my email address. Those emails would turn up and they would look up the guest list and say, is MailChimp on the guest list? Can MailChimp send emails on John's behalf? They look up the list and says, no, you don't appear, and they'll they don't accept the emails. They'll put them to spam or they'll reject them entirely. So that's how SPF works. It's like the guest list. Okay. So the second element of authentication is called DKIM. Now, what DKIM is, remember, we've probably all seen it in the books in school and stuff, and in movies, you see they used to use this wax seal on an envelope when they were sending it, and if that wax seal had been tampered with, it became obvious, and it was you knew someone had tampered with that letter, so to speak. So when DKIM is applied to every email you send, it's like a digital wax seal that's been put on the email. Okay, it's digitally identified as being an email that's came from you, and during the process of it being transported from where you're sending the email to where it arrives, that seal needs to remain intact, and when it gets to the destination, they check the seal to say, has the seal been tampered with? Has it been changed? Has it been modified in any way? And of course, this is all done digitally. You don't need to know how it's done, you just need to know what happens. It's done digitally, and that digital check will either say yes, it's been tampered with, or no, it's absolutely fine. The ones that have been tampered with, again, they're put into spam folder or rejected, and the ones that have not been tampered with, they get a green tick, and all's well. So that's the second element, DKIM. The third and the final element is DMARC. Now think of DMARC as like the security guard, or the person who decides what to do with emails that have failed either SPF check or the DKIM check, or some may fail both. And what we can see here is we've got, if it passes SPF and it passes DKIM, then there's a good chance your email is going to be delivered into your subscriber's inbox, and all is good. However, if either one or both of those fail, then DMARC decides what to do with those emails. Okay, and there are three options that DMARC can choose from. The first one in here is, you can see that it says policy is none. Okay, just where my mouse cursor is in there. Policy is none. That means that it's going to do nothing. Okay, it's probably going to put them into spam. The second one, the policy is set to quarantine. That means it will definitely go into spam. And the third one, the policy being reject, it means it's going to reject the email altogether, and it won't even accept it into the server. Now, which one of those policies is adopted is entirely up to you as the email marketer. My recommendation is to start with none, and then over time what you'll get is a report each time or any time someone tries to masquerade as being you and they send emails and it fails SPF REST or DKIM, and as a result DMARC flags it as such. DMARC will send you a report and say, oh, by the way, someone tried to send an email pretending to be you. And as you get more confident over time, you can then start to increase the strength of that DMARC allocation, if you like. So after a while, once you get quite happy with none, you can move it up to quarantine, where you're instructing the email servers just to put it into spam. And then on the third one, the most harsh one is the reject policy, so you're just rejecting the emails. So like I say, you don't need to know any of this stuff. I'm just sharing this with you so you get background information on what these three elements of authentication mean. So how does that all work in practice? Well, we need, as email marketers, we need to get an SPF, a DKIM and a DMARC record into our DNS records. Now, what are DNS records? Again, this is technical stuff you don't need to know, but I'm just going to explain briefly what they are. DNS records is essentially like a lookup table that exists worldwide. Everybody on the internet can see the DNS records for your domain, okay? And what it does, DNS basically tells, like if someone navigates to your website, let's say in my case provenflows.com, if someone navigates to that, the DNS record tells the computer where to go to. So if someone types in my domain name, the first thing it does is it looks up the DNS record. It says, this person wants to go to this destination, where should I point them to? And that DNS record will point them to wherever my website is hosted, okay? So that could be on a hosting platform, it could be on GoDaddy, it could be on HostGate, it could be any number of platforms that I have that hosted. And what the DNS record does is it points it to the appropriate place. So you can see here in this example, someone types in example.com, It goes and it looks up the DNS records that are available worldwide. It comes back and says example.com resolves to, and then it gives you a whole bunch of long numbers. This is called an IP address. Again, doesn't matter what it means. It's just a technical thing that it tells people where, or it tells the system where to send people when they type that in. The same thing happens with emails. If you type john@provenflows.com, it goes and looks up the DNS record and say, where should I send this email to? It will go and look at what's known as my MX record. You can see down here at the bottom, MX is for mail. It says which MX record to look at. It looks at it, says, where should I send John's email to? And it goes and sends it to the appropriate server. In my case, it would be a Gmail server, so it would send it to there. So that's what DNS records are used for. Now let's look to see a real world example of what they look like. So these are actually taken from one of my demo accounts for Kit for my DNS records for a particular domain. So I've got 3 records in my DNS records that are specifically for, you can see here, this one's for SPF, this one's for DKIM, and this one's for DMARC. You can just see in there, by the way, that the policy for this one is set to none. So if you go back to that slide there, you can see this policy is none, quarantine, or reject. This particular one is set to none. So like I say, this thing probably looks really difficult and really complex, especially if you're not technical, but I promise you it's not. Okay, so this has taken me a lot longer to explain this than it will for you to actually implement what you need to implement. It's literally a couple of minutes it'll take you. So now we know what all these records are, what they're used for. If I jump to my Kit account, what you can see in here is Kit calls it a verified sending domain. You can see down here, my domain, provenflows.com. I've got the green tick because I've got all my DNS records already installed and available for people to look up. So I'm good to go when it comes to sending emails, okay? And that's what you need to get to as well. If you're using Kit, I'm going to show you briefly how Kit helps you do this. And to be honest, most of the email platforms will help you do this. So even if you're using another one like MailerLite or MailChimp or whatever you're using for your email, they probably all have a tool similar to the one I'm going to show you here. So this is just taken from Kit's website, and it's how to verify your sending domain. Now what essentially you do is, if I go back to Kit at the moment, if I click on there, add a verified sending domain, the first thing it'll do is ask me for the domain that I want to verify. Okay, so I type that in and click next, and when I do that, this is what it brings me to. It says, step 2, you need to copy these DNS records into your DNS settings. That black button there, that's the magic button that you need to click that says set this up for me. I don't want to do it, you just go and set it up for me. Kit then kicks into action and says, I'm going to connect to a platform called Entry, okay, ENTRY, and Kit talks to Entry, and what it does is it sends all the DNS records to Entry, and then Entry updates the records in your DNS settings. Entry can connect to your host. Now at this point, what you do need is you need the credentials for your domain host. If you don't know who your domain host is, ask whoever looks after your technical stuff, your website and your emails, where your host is. It's probably going to be a company like GoDaddy, Bluehost, Hostinger, HostGator, one of these hosting companies that will manage your DNS records on your behalf. Okay. Now during the process here, you can see in this example here in Kit, it's actually a GoDaddy host that's being used. And you're asked to present your username and your password for your GoDaddy account. And once you submit that, then Kit takes over and does everything else for you. Once it's completed, it usually takes about maybe between 1 and 3 minutes to update. Once that's updated, then what you'll see in your account is that green tick there. Okay, and that is you've got a verified sending domain. And then from that point onwards, every time you send emails and it arrives at the recipient's email servers, it will do the checks. It will say, does it have SPF? In other words, is it on the guest list? Yes, tick. Does it have DKIM? In other words, is that wax seal? Is it on it, and it's not been tampered with? Yep, pass that test as well. Tick. Okay, the third one, the DMARC, the security guard, looks at the results of the first two and says, it passed that one, it passed that one. Okay, I'm going to put the emails into the inbox. And if it detects a failure on either of those two, then it'll probably put the emails into spam, or it'll reject them altogether. And that's why people's emails land in spam folders. So hopefully this video has been helpful to explain what email verification or domain verification looks like, why you need it, what each element does, and as you can see there, it's literally a 2 or 3 minute job to get those basic DNS records set up so that when you do send out your emails, they're landing in people's inboxes, they're being able to open them, read them, engage with your emails, click on your links, and ultimately buy from you. Is, you know, essentially what we're all ultimately trying to do as email marketers, is to grow our business using email as a tool. If you get any questions, comments, if you get stuck with anything, drop a comment below. I'll jump in and I'll help you out as best I can. But I hope you found this helpful, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Cheers.